feels like an age. And we are back. Meaning Crisis and Shell. With Akira the Dawn of a Vacant Jaw. Strap in. Relax. We're about to go in. If you want to jump right to the live lo-fi lecture, the timestamp will be in the description. If you're locked in live, smash that like, post that stream, post that link, all that stuff. We're getting ready to go in with Meaning Crisis and Shell number 13. But first, brand new from Akira the Dawn and Graham Hancock. This is Mother Ayahuasca.
Akira. He's got cloak.
But what draws people to ayahuasca again and again? To brace themselves for this experience. And you do have to brace yourself. There's this extraordinary effect at the level of consciousness. And one of those effects has to do with creativity. And we can see the creative cosmogenic impulse of ayahuasca in the paintings of ayahuasca shamans. As these paintings show another universal experience of ayahuasca, the encounter with seemingly intelligent entities which communicate with us telepathically. I'm making no claim one way or another as to the reality status of these entities we encounter. Simply that phenomenologically, in the ayahuasca experience, they are encountered by people all over the world, and most frequently of all, the spirit of ayahuasca herself. Mother Ayahuasca, who is the healer. Mother Ayahuasca, who is the healer. And although she's kind of the mother goddess of the planet, she seems to take a direct personal interest in us as individuals, to heal our ills, to want us to be the best that we can possibly be, to correct errors and mistakes in our behavior that may be leading us down the wrong path. And this is perhaps why ayahuasca has been fantastically successful in getting people off harmful addictions to hard drugs such as heroin and cocaine. Jacques Mabit at the Takiwasi clinic in Peru brings heroin and cocaine addicts out there for a month, gives them 12 ayahuasca sessions. They have encounters with Mother Ayahuasca during those sessions that lead them not to wish to take heroin or cocaine anymore. More than half leave completely free of their addiction, never return to it, and don't even have withdrawal symptoms. The same incredible healing work was being done in Canada by Dr. Gabor Mate until the Canadian government intervened and stopped his healing practice on the grounds that ayahuasca itself was an illegal drug. Mother Ayahuasca, who is the healer. Mother Ayahuasca, who is the healer. Mother Ayahuasca, who is the healer. Mother Ayahuasca, who is the healer.
System works.
Gang. Are you kidding me? Pian pian.
Primitive and traditional initiation rites have to do with transforming the mode of reaction. sometimes, usually,
Interesting.
uh,
Gang, what's up?
actually very painful,
Hey, we're here.
so that the individual
Welcome.
think he's a little boy. There's some rather amusing ones from Australia, for instance, where things are pretty fierce.
Smash at ye yonder lake.
Begin to become kind of nasty and
Our stream was set to private.
difficult.
Hurrah!
The women get together and give them a good
Thank you, Jesus.
around the lakes with.
Make some noise!
And in a few weeks, something very interesting happens. The men, all dressed up in strange, godlike costumes, such as the youngsters have always been taught were the figures of the divinities. They come in with bull roars and yowls and all kinds of terrifying
Yowls!
noises. And the children, the boys, run to their mothers for protection.
What's up, gang? It's Meaning, Crisis, and Chill tonight. We about to go in.
Then the men grab them and take them away, so mother's no good anymore.
Hey.
And now they have to face this thing. And then what they have to face is really no fun. So mother's no good anymore. And now they have to face this thing. And then what they have to face is really no fun. So mother's no good anymore. And now they have to face this thing. And then what they have to face is really no fun.
Welcome, brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters. Meaning, Crisis, and Chill number 13. Buddhism and Parasitic processing. We're about to go in. For whatever reason, the stream was set to private, and I just noticed. I was like, "Where is everybody? Why is there no one in the stream? Oh, it's set to private. They can't get in." Welcome. You are welcome in now. Welcome in. You are. Smash that like, everybody. Smash that like. That smash. That means click the like button. That's what sends out our invites. If you're on YouTube. If you're on Twitch, lovely to see you on Twitch. And if you're on ThinkSpot, I can't see you, but I can feel you. I can feel you deep in my heart. I can feel you deep inside. That's not a euphemism. How dare you? Wonderful to be here. Wonderful to see you. Wonderful to finally be able to get back to live scoring the Meaning Crisis Awakening from the series with Viveki John, which we've been doing every week for 13 weeks. And then last week we were scuppered. We were scuppered by Jove because we live in Texas, you know, we broadcast from Texas, the royal we. And we were scuppered by glacial activities. Glacial activities wiped out the power. And what did we do? We had a fireside chat around a telephone, like they used to do back in caveman days, you know? That's what we used to do in caveman days, in case you didn't know. Hey, thank you, Casino Brown. Thank you, Casino Brown on Twitch, for the support. Yeah, just like the caveman, you know what, cavemen, as far as I'm aware, cavemen used to sit around with their pet dinosaurs broadcasting on telephones. Because they didn't have computers, obviously. Good news! New album's coming out this week, and if you were one of the lucky couple of people who were not locked out at the beginning of the stream, you'll have heard a track from that album. It's by Akira and Graham Hancock. And it's called The War on Consciousness. And it's coming out in a couple days, baby. And the good news is that I finished my work on the following album. It's just a short hour ago. Just a short hour ago, I finished my work on the album that follows. That is dialed in. It's glorious. I was having a wonderful time today. I got a thing I occasionally do sometimes. Sometimes I sing my guitar solos, or I sing my synth solos, you know? It'll be like this. Like that, right? I do that with my face, and then I convert that into MIDI data, and then I run it through different synth patches until I find the one that sounds like what's in my head. That's one of my ways of. I have so many different ways of working, you know. Every song I do is like, there could be a billion things you could do, a billion ways of expressing, and you know, you choose whatever the way that, well, you if you're Akira the Don, you just flow into, because you're just running from one thing to another. You know. But it's interesting when you're looking back on it, you're like, oh, that's the approach I chose for this. Of all the approaches I could have chosen, for some reason, today, the final song, the final thing I did was do a widdly widdly face solo. It is really cool. So you're going to look forward to that, by Jove. I also just signed off on this month's MEANINGWAVE.com merch capsule. 4 fantastic new designs, so that you're gonna see those tomorrow. They'll drop tomorrow, or maybe tonight. But you know, you'll be able to see them tomorrow. How about that? How about that? Another thing happened. What happened? You know, synchronicities. You know. So the album I've been working on, finished today. These days, what I tend to do with Twitter is I'll kind of log into it like once or twice a day and just check my replies. It's about as much I deal with Twitter at the moment. Anyway, I finished the record and I log in, and what's the top tweet I see? Like the thing that's just first there is it's a bot account of the. It's a bot account quoting something that the subject of the record had said in the chorus I'd just finished working on. Okay, well, if that isn't ridiculous, I don't know what is. So it seems like we are still walking with Allah, brothers and sisters. Every time I finish one of these albums, there's some ridiculous, you know, you can track it on the streams, I imagine. Someone should make a catalog of streams where that's happening. Moments in streams where Akira the Don points out ridiculous synchronicity in finishing album. But that's today's. One of today's. There was a few. That was one of them. That was one of them. Anyway, smash that like, smash that like, smash that like. Let's get a few more people in here. It seems our notifications have not gone out at all. This time it's not Susan's fault. It's our fault for having the stream set to private and not noticing to the last minute. But stick a couple, everyone smash that like and pop a thing in a group chat and that. Get a few more people in here before we do this thing. People love Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, the lo-fi lecture series. It'd be a shame for them to miss it, you know? Big shouts out to Ask Mikey. Man like Ask Mikey, thank you for the support, Ask Mikey. We're over on Twitch, 8 months of Ask Mikey, and we've just had a hype train kick off on Twitch. What? Hurrah! Well, if that ain't nice, I don't know what is either. Mother's no good. Akira the Don and Joseph Campbell is the instrumental you're listening to there. All right. International High 5 o'clock, and I want to point something out. My calculations for, you know, the past decade or whatever have had thank you, Clint P34 over on Twitch. Hype train ongoing. My calculations had us set to enter. You know, we have this seven-year cultural swing from what essentially is punk to psychedelic, from dark to multicolor or whatever, you know. And I had this predicted for February 2021. There or thereabouts. February, March 2021. And many signs of this I suggested we would see. We would cut things culturally, would become more colorful, looser, vibrant, psychedelic in general. As we begin this, it's a 7-year process of an intensification of that. So one of the aspects of it is that sort of conspiratorial thinking also becomes more psychedelic, and for the past 7 years, people have been concerned with earthly matters of politics, and religion, and gender conflicts, and things of that nature. And I predicted that such thought would start going in a more woo direction. Things would get very woo very quickly, and people would start thinking and talking about aliens again a lot more, and looking into the nature of the mysteries of Earth, and and humanity's past and secrets and all that kind of thing. And I personally have had an explosion of that, particularly over the past week, with regards to things that's coming my way information-wise, things that have been kind of presented to me. Yeah, and I'll go into that at some point. But I would be interested to know, for the International High Five, if you have seen any signs of the neo-psychedelic age incoming out there in the world. People send me messages, ask Mikey what's up. People send me messages sharing such things with me, but I'd like a little, see what you locked in live. Has anyone seen any, in their life, any signs of this kind of thing that we're talking about out there? Let me know. Alex Drummond says, woo! Or should we say, woo! Exactly, woo. Woo. Woo activities. As Mikey says right here, right now. Alex Drummond says it would make sense with Bitcoin trend. Yes, that's a very good point. XX Mad Dog says ancient astronauts. Well, you've seen some. Benjamin Gunn says Terrence and 434. Jules Vaughan says Speaky Face or something. Alex Drummond says woo. Woo. Correct says MEANINGWAVE exists. That's a good point. My buh. Over on Twitch, thank you for the support. My buh. Jules is in the house. Allah Rubik's Pot ES says Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is with you, Akira. Thank you. Good. It's good to know. Thank goodness for that. Thank goodness for that. RB Dugan says Tuesday. Riley Steese is almost like the bots are listening and watching our every move. I mean, they are. They are, you know. Oh, what was I reading about earlier? Oh, no, I don't want to go into that. But, it's oh, goodness. Oh, my goodness. Bricker Johnson says, Maz. Alex Drummond says, I'll need proof. Lol, I also wish we see this too. RB Dugan says, there's an outside. David S., California, baby, my subscription services. David S. consists of Akira and UFO talk. XX Maddox says, not aliens. You haven't seen any aliens. Jules Vaughn says, Phoenix Light. Liberate the Forks. Mushrooms being decriminalized in various states is a sign. That really is a sign, right? If ever you needed a sign of the neo-psychedelic age incoming, that would be mass decriminalization of psychedelics across the world. Jaredine says, I felt 2020 coming since 2013, and I've been hearing people ask deeper and deeper questions about our existence these last few years, indeed. Jules Vaughan says, that was an unbelievable sight, seeing the size of that object, whatever it was. Sujachez says, just saw Stanley in a movie my son was watching as his music played behind Akira. Well, if that ain't a sign, I don't know what is. Ricker Johnson says, I woke up to my ego recently. This is a sign. John Hannibal Smith says, I heard in a Gada DeVita the other day, that's psychedelic. Whoa! Life is epic. We're on a hype train. We got 56 seconds of a level 2 hype train. Just whilst having preamble. I think that's a record. I've never seen that happen before. Shouts out to Twitch. Shouts out to Twitch. Epic preamble in the house. Shouts out to YouTube. People are starting to discover there's a stream. Greg says, I think Alan Watts and JVP on vinyl are good signs. Yes, they are. Christopher Ward says, hey, hope I'm not late. I'm at my new job at Auburn University. You're bang on time, baby. Mel Paradise says, woo! Woo season. Vanessa says, no psychedelic or alien experiences, but we made the kids sufficiently crap themselves watching the movie Signs. That counts. Riley D says, I can feel it coming like Phil Collins, guest DJ set at Future Meaning Fest. I can feel those changes coming. Hype train complete. Congratulations, Twitch. You are an excellent platform and an excellent section of the MEANINGWAVE Autonomous Zone. XX Maddox says, I just watched Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia about making synthetic DMT. Cindy Bailey's got a good one. Pretty sure aliens revealed themselves to my parents and I. We were talking about them, and my dad says, I wish I could see one. Bam! We turned to the sky, and there was a giant cloud looking like an alien. There you go. John Hannibal Smith says they are saying that Khrushchev ordered the JFK killing today. That's from the 60s. Really? Today? What? What? Ha ha ha! What did I tell you? Conspiratorial explosion cometh. Conspiratorial explosion cometh. They're gonna start going real hard on the YouTube censorship, but that just means the other places are gonna get real popping. Whoa! Whoa! What a time to be alive. Trust Crusher says, I'm reading Nietzsche in my free time. Like, what the... Yeah, there you go. We asked for signs and signs were sent. Skeptic Rise says, Akira the Don, what isn't or hasn't gotten woo yet? I mean, you're right. Things are very, very woo out there. It's, a lot of it's down to just paying attention, right? The last Malin says, thanks for helping to open my mind's eye. Hey, thank you for being here. Sway says, how about some sacred geometry that moves while you simultaneously get an audio meditation and guided energy clearing? Maybe I heard the question wrong. Nope. Nope. Game with Leo says, Clubhouse about to get lit. Already is, baby. Go. Hang around some of them Moorish ancient alien science rooms. Yo. What up, Mr. Benny says, love your spirit, sir. You are breathtaking. Skeptic Rise says, Clubhouse is hella woo. Game with Leo says, does Spotify have a live option yet? Not yet, but I have a feeling they're about to announce one. Interesting you say that. They've got a conference or something, some kind of online conference, I think next week, and they're announcing a bunch of new stuff. I got a message to the back end of my artist platform, and they said we have new things about our plans for the future of music distribution or something. So I imagine that they're about to go all in on video and live streaming. I think they're going to attempt being direct competition to YouTube. I think they're going to be getting all music videos on there. I think they're going to be integrating comment sections. I have a feeling. I don't know. I could be wrong. Yeah! And that'll be pretty trippy too, baby. Therefore, let us get that international high five and let's kick it off. 3, 2, 1. Yeah! All right, baby. What you gonna about it? Look. God bless MEANINGWAVE Autonomous Zone. Let's get it. Meaning Crisis and Chill 13. Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. Buddhism and Parasitic. Processing.
back to Awakening for the Meaning Crisis. So last time what we did is we finished up a cognitive scientific exploration of higher states of consciousness, awakening experiences, the kinds of mystical experiences that bring about massive transformation. We saw how we can give a psychologically accurate description of these processes that explain both the experiential profile that people are having and some of the features that they find therein. We were also able to talk about this at the level of machine learning and information processing and at the brain level. And what comes out of this is a picture of a state of consciousness in which we are getting a flow state that is improving our optimal grip on the world, optimizing our performance for making sense of things, and enhancing our overall capacity for learning and problem solving. And we saw that in fact provides a very good justification for these states being the guidance for the transformation of life, in that what they do is they give a brain state that is highly optimized, processing things in a way that gives us a tremendous sense of a plausible grip on the world, and that is making use of processing that is absolutely indispensable and foundational for us. It has a kind of important priority in all of our processing. And what I suggested from this is that while it doesn't give us any good theories in the sense of propositional claims about the metaphysical structure of reality, these states do justify their claim to give us guidance. So although they are not rational in the sense of providing good argument and evidence for beliefs, they are rational in the sense of wisdom, in that they optimize some of our core processing for being in contact with the reality in a way that is coupled optimally to our own processes of self-transcendence and the cultivation of wisdom. So the Buddha awakens, and that awakening gives him this state that is guiding him to a fundamental transformation in how he understands the world and how he understands, not just intellectually, because that's what I've been contrasting here, but in a participatory fashion, in an existential fashion, himself and the world. We talked about how this is bringing about a sati, a deep remembering of the being mode, so that he is seeing through the frustrating futility of modal confusion. But there is more that's going on. This higher state of consciousness is not only helping him remember the being mode and helping him to transcend through systematic illusion and go through something deeply analogous to a developmental shift. We can also see it in terms, we can see what's going on in his claim to enlightenment and its relevance to the cultivation of wisdom and the enhancement of meaning in terms of the pronouncements he made from this state. Now, talking about this is very problematic because the attempts by the West to understand some of the central tenets of Buddhism has not had a very good history. I recommend to you Stephen Batchelor's book, Awakening the West, or how the West has systematically misunderstood. And Batchelor makes a current argument in a series of his books. I've got to meet Stephen at a conference and at dinner together. I recommend all of his works very strongly and very highly to you. And so from his works and in discussion with him, he argues that the West is still in the grip of a problematic way of trying to interpret Buddhism. So let's take a quick look at that, and then we will return to what the central claims of Buddhism are, and I want to show you why even that way of putting it is perhaps incorrect. So Batchelor in one of his books, Alone with Others, and he follows it up with Buddhism Without Beliefs, and then later on this is followed up by even a more radical After Buddhism, in which he's taking the position of somebody who's post-religious, very germane to many of us. But he does argue in Alone with Others that we face an interpretation crisis when we're trying to understand Buddhism. We have two approaches that people give us for how we should try and interpret Buddhism. Of course, this will not be relevant just to Buddhism, but for any position that exists in a different culture or history that we're trying to understand, be it Buddhism or Stoicism or Neoplatonism, for example. So he says we are confronted with two different positions. One is the claim that you can only interpret Buddhism from within a tradition, and we've seen good reason why you might argue that this is, right, the kind of stuff we're talking about here, wisdom and self-transcendence. This is not largely a matter of altering your belief. This is about going through transformation in your perspectival and participatory knowing. It's about fundamentally altering the agent arena relationship, your existential modes, etc. And so if you are not engaged within the transformative practice, then of course you do not understand what Buddhism is. It has to, in that sense, be understood from within. And this is a general property of wisdom per se. Wisdom is something that must be understood from within. The problem with that, of course, is it's myopic, right? There are very many Buddhist traditions, and they are relative to certain times and place in particular historical contexts, and to claim that that particular interpretation, a particular sect or tradition is the sole pathway to understanding or interpreting Buddhism is, of course, myopic. It's narrow-minded and often parochial. It claims things as fundamental, which are often very contingent. So, what's the alternative? The alternative is, well, what the alternative says is, the problem with this is very subjective. I don't know if that's exactly the right word, but the idea here is, right, this is, the problem with seeing things from the inside is that tends to be very subjective, and of course that means you're not understanding the phenomena as it is, but you're only seeing it through your own particular bias. So the alternative, outside any tradition, and this is typified in the academic study of Buddhism, for example, like within religious studies or something like that. And then the main argument here is, and this will often happen, it's not always the case, but if you meet people in religious studies and you'll say, are you studying Buddhism? And they'll say, yes, I'm studying Buddhism. And then you'll ask them, well, what practices do you engage in? And they'll say, oh, no, I don't engage in any practices. That would be a mistake. If I got too involved, too close to this material, I would lose my objectivity. I would lose my ability to critically reflect on it, critically compare it to other traditions, other approaches. So the idea here is what we will have, right, is an objective account. Now, although Stephen doesn't mention this in his book, Batchelor, Stephen Batchelor doesn't mention it in his book, this is very reminiscent of the problem that Socrates faced. Because what we have here is transformative relevance, and here we have some attempt to get at the truth. And like the Socratic project, I would put it to you, and this is what I think Batchelor is saying, is that Buddhism is about both of these. It's about trying to find transformatively relevant truths. But that means we have to transcend both of these ways of interpreting Buddhism. So he points out that we have to get beyond both of these in some fashion. How do we do this? Well, he points out that we need to do this in a way that is going to be relevant to issues of meaning in our life. So this interpretation crisis where we have these two competing and diametrically opposed ways of trying to interpret and import Buddhism, is actually interacting with the meaning crisis in society. Because we're not doing this just in some empty cultural vacuum. We are precisely interested, as I've been suggesting throughout this series of lectures, we're doing this precisely because we're deeply involved with the project of trying to recover how we can cultivate wisdom and enhance meaning in our lives in a cultural historical context that is not supportive and is in fact often deleterious to those existentially necessary endeavors. Okay, so what do? We have to break out of all of this in some fashion. And what he does is he tries to see where these are both fixated. And what he argues is that this will become myopic because it will get fixated on the particular propositions of a tradition. It will get fixated on beliefs. And this is in fact what you study over here objectively. You study, of course, the texts and the beliefs that have been propositionally rendered by a particular tradition. It's this belief fixation that needs to be broken through. This is why he entitles the book that came after Alone with Others, Buddhism Without Beliefs, because he tries to argue that part of what is preventing us from really getting both sides of Buddhism is that both of these are fixed, locked, like being locked inside the box in the 9-dot problem, on trying to understand Buddhism as a set of beliefs. We have gotten so used to this way of thinking, and we'll see later why it is a post-Christian way of thinking, that these traditions for these axial legacy traditions for cultivating wisdom and self-transcendence are to be understood as creeds, as systems of beliefs that we now even will equate, right, the word belief with these practices. We'll talk about it as a belief system, or we'll even use the word belief as a synonym for faith, etc. So we have gotten so oriented towards this reduction of all of what we've been talking about here, all of this transformational process to the possession and the assertion of beliefs, and again we'll see historically why that's the case, that we can't break out of this. Interestingly, although I won't be able to do it in this video, we're going to see that breaking out of, like, trying to understand meaning in terms of belief systems is also going to be needed to address the meaning crisis. I have been pointing you towards that repeatedly. Belief systems, namely ideologies, are attempts to create meaning, but they fail for the deep reason, and you've already seen a lot of argument and evidence for this, is that a lot of your meaning-making machinery is not occurring at the level of your propositional knowledge, your beliefs and your assertions of which beliefs you adhere to. So he proposes instead what we need to do is we need to look at Buddhism ultimately existentially. Now you remember, existentially has to do with these modes. He also invokes in Alone with Others the distinction between the being mode and the having mode, and he proposes that Buddhism is remembering the being mode, and I've already talked about that in a previous video. And so he says, look, traditionally what the Buddha said, and now we're returning to what the Buddha said is in order to try and get more of what his enlightenment was about. Traditionally what the Buddha said is presented as the Four Noble Truths. And these are 4 statements or propositions that are usually presented to our ears as claims to be believed. And that what makes you a Buddhist is if you believe them. The problem with this, of course, is that it is taking place at this very level that Batchelor argues we need to get beyond. It's not, of course, that people don't believe things within Buddhism. It's that what we've been talking about here, these processes of transformation, are taking place at the level of perspectival knowing, at the level of transforming of states of consciousness, and at the participatory level, transforming the fundamental machinery of the self, of the agent-arena relationship, and the modes of existence. So we need to understand these Four Noble Truths as things that could help afford the kind of transformations we've been talking about. The point about these is not to believe them. The point about them is to get them to help you reenact the Buddha's enlightenment. You're not doing that. If you cannot enact enlightenment, then you are not getting the Four Noble Truths. He proposes, therefore, that we should not call them the Four Noble Truths, we should call them the Four Ennobling Truths. I then proposed to him in person that we shouldn't even call them truths anymore, because truth is a property of propositions. Actually, I said what you should call them is the Four Ennobling Provocations. You're trying to provoke people into change. So let me try and go through the Four Noble Truths, but restating them as four enabling, that means affording self-transcendence, provocations. By doing that, I think we can get back to, if that's the right verb, what the Buddha was conveying about what's going on in enlightenment. What kind of transformation is being brought about by the awakening experience? And what is it alleviating? Okay, so let's go through these one by one. Okay, so I'll present the standard way of representing the truth and then the reformulation in order to deal with Bachelor's, I think, astute criticism, and in order to interconnect with all the argumentation we have been developing throughout this video series. So the first one is typically stated as all is suffering, or all of life is suffering. Now, that's first of all, if that were the statement to be believed, it's false. Because suffering is a comparative term, and comparative terms can't be extended to everything. That would be like saying everything is tall. It doesn't make any sense. Things are only tall relative to other things being shorter. So, first of all, it doesn't really mean all is. It's something more like all is threatened by. Well, what's the all? Does it mean everything in existence? Should we interpret it metaphysically? Well, I mentioned last time that we should be careful about giving metaphysical interpretations to what people bring out of these awakening experiences. And the Buddha himself was famously reticent to give any metaphysical interpretations to his statements. So let's try and follow that. In order to get at that, let's note what this word means. Okay? Because again, we've tended to allow a word to go through a process of trivialization and reduction, and we've lost part of the meaning. Let me give you, first of all, an analogy. Okay, so the original meaning of this word is insane. But it has come to be synonymous with angry. I'm mad at Agnes. It doesn't mean I'm insane, right? It means that I'm angry at Agnes. How did that happen? Well, one of the ideas is anger is a state that can render you, if it becomes extreme anger can render you temporarily insane, and therefore temporarily mad. Anger is a cause, a pertinent cause of madness. Okay, so suffering, people usually hear pain, distress when they hear the word suffering. That person is suffering. But that's not actually what the word means. To suffer means to undergo. It means to lose agency. So you can actually suffer joy. You can have so much joy that you sort of have lost control of yourself. You can have so much pleasure. It is not oxymoronic to say, I'm suffering pleasure. It means I'm having so much pleasure that I've sort of lost control of the situation, right? Now, pain is a very powerful way of losing agency. Why? First of all, it's highly disruptive, and secondly, pain is associated usually with damage, and damage is a state in which we're often losing agency. So, right? Don't hear just pain. The Buddha is not saying everything's painful. That's ridiculous, because if everything was painful, nothing would be painful. Even all of your experiences can be painful. Doesn't mean anything particular, because many of your experiences can't be painful in and of themselves, right? Because again, this isn't an absolute kind of claim. Instead, pay attention to this connection rather than this one. Do you remember? Last video gave a parable of this suffering. It's the monkey that grabs the pitch and tries to free itself, and then the other hand gets stuck in both paws and head, and then it gets killed. There's nothing in there of pain. Most of the Buddha's metaphors are not pain metaphors, they're entrapment metaphors. Being fettered, losing your freedom, losing your agency. That's why the Buddha doesn't describe enlightenment in terms of relief, but he would famously say, just like wherever you dip into the ocean, it has one taste, the taste of salt. No matter where you dip into my teaching, it has one taste, the taste of freedom. Okay. So what he seems to be saying is that all of your life is threatened with the possibility of losing your freedom. So let's go from all is suffering to a provocation. Realize that all of your life is threatened with a loss of freedom, a loss of agency. And there's a word for this kind of loss that's often translated as suffering, which is dukkha. Dukkha, again, does not mean pain. What does dukkha mean? Well, the etymology is, imagine you have a wheel, and it's off-center on its axis. So the axle is not properly going through the center of the wheel, and as the wheel is turning, it's destroying itself. So there's a self-destructiveness. Or you have, your arm is out of joint, it's disjointed, like when Shakespeare has, Hamlet says, the time is out of joint, right? It's out of joint, and as you're moving your arm, it's destroying itself. So it means like an empty gap that's sort of dirty, so that as things are moving within it, they're destroying themselves. So the idea of something that's engaged in a process of self-destruction, which of course is one of the powerful ways you can lose your agency, is through self-destructive processes, is what's going on here. So realize that all of your life is threatened, very really threatened, existentially threatened, by a capacity for self-destructive behavior. Self-deceptive, self-destructive behavior. So now you see what he's doing is so situated very firmly within the axial tradition. So what does he mean here? How can we try and understand this a little bit better? So this is work based on some stuff I've published with Leo Ferraro, and then I'll talk about some additional and important new work by Mark Lewis. I want to try and trace a kind of pattern in your cognitive processing that can very often occur. And the core of the argument I want to make is the very processes that make you adaptively intelligent, and we've been talking about this from the beginning, also make you vulnerable to self-deceptive, self-destructive behavior. Okay, so let's say you encounter an event and you interpret the event as bad. Okay. Now, one of the adaptive machines you have is your brain immediately is trying to predict and anticipate other events like that. The point of you encountering something potentially even painful or distressing is not just to it's to make you sensitive in anticipating what's going to happen in the future. Okay, so your brain now tries to assess the probability of another event like this happening. Now, we'll get into this in more detail later, although we've talked a bit about it already with ideas about salience, is I can't take in all of the information available to me. If I was to try and calculate the actual probability of an event, I would have to track all the variables in my environment. That's astronomically vast. Even a supercomputer cannot possibly do this. Right? The thing is, when we do probability problems in school, we are given all the variables by stipulation. But the real world doesn't work that way. The real world has an indefinitely large set of variables interacting in an indefinitely large number of ways. So what do? Well, we use what are called heuristics. We use shortcuts that try and help us cut through and zero in on the relevant data, the relevant information. As we've said before, the zeroing in on relevant information is crucial. So one of the things we do is we use the representativeness heuristic. Right. You judge how probable an event is by how prototypical it is, how salient it is, how much it stands out in your mind. Right? And that will often interact with another heuristic, the availability heuristic. This is you judge how probable an event is by how easy you can remember a similar event occurring, or how easily you can imagine another event occurring. So these are actually very adaptive for you. Now the problem is you're in a bad state because you've just had something bad happen to you. Now that triggers a thing called encoding specificity. When you're sad, it's very difficult for you to remember events in which you're happy. It's very easy for you to remember events in which you're sad. That's because your memory doesn't just store the facts, it stores all that perspectival participatory knowing. It also stores the state you are in. This leads to very sort of paradoxical things. If you lose your keys when you're drunk, one of the things you should do, if you want to get your keys back, is get drunk again, because chances are it will improve your memory. If you're studying for a test and you have a headache and you take some aspirin, when you're actually doing the test, take the aspirin, because it will improve your performance. I mean, so there's classic experiments on this. In one experiment, right, you have a bunch of people learning a set of words, right, in the same room, group A and group B, and then in the second part of the experiment, group A does it in the same room, group B does it in a different room. That's the only difference in them. Group A will remember a significant greater number of words than group B, just because they're in the same room. Okay? Now this is very adaptive. You may say, that's great. No, it's not, because your brain is trying to always fit you to the environment. So it doesn't just store information, it stores how you were fitted to the environment or the context. It's very adaptive. So now what's happening here? Well, you're in a bad state, so it's easy for you to remember bad things. That means it's easy for you to remember bad things, and that means you judge the probability of bad things happening to be increasing. This bad thing just happened to you, so it's very salient. That makes you judge that it's much more probable it's going to happen, and these are reinforcing each other. Now, all of this is interacting with what's called the confirmation bias. We'll go over a lot more of this later when we talk about problem solving. what this is an adaptive strategy you use where you tend to only look for information that supports your current belief. Because very often trying to find disconfirmation takes too long and it's very difficult and complex. So we tend to look for what confirms. So now, the confirmation bias, now as I'm going through my memory and my imagination, I will tend to look for things that confirm my forming judgment that this event is highly probable. Now all of this machinery can go awry, right? All of these heuristics will mislead you. It's because of this heuristic that people make mistakes when they take loved ones to the airport and things like that, right? Because we can imagine planes falling from the sky, and when it does, it's very representative for us. People describe it as a tragedy, it's in the news, and so we judged airplane crashes to be highly probable, even though they're very low in probability. But then we turn and get into our automobile, which is the North American death machine, without paying any attention to it. So we misjudge probabilities because of these heuristics. Now, we can't do without them. It's like when we talked about hyperbolic discounting. You can't do without them. They're adaptive. You need them. Let's continue this. So these are all reinforcing each other. The confirmation bias. So now what do? You judge the probability to be great. Okay. Now notice how most of this is happening automatically in a self-organizing fashion. That's again because imagine if I had to do everything fully consciously. Okay, I'm going to pick up the cup. Now I need to start tensing my upper bicep. I need to start moving my... If I had to move everything, I couldn't pick up the cup. I need my cognition to be inherently self-organizing. We've seen that throughout. The way in which your processes need to be happening simultaneously, bottom up and top down, like when you're doing reading and you're reading both the letters and the words. Your cognition needs to be self-organizing. It needs to be largely automatic. These are adaptively indispensable for you. Okay, so you judge the probability as great. Well, what effect does that judgment have on you? It's not emotionally neutral. Okay, that makes you anxious. When your brain starts to conclude that the probability of negative events is high, you get anxiety. What does anxiety do to you? Well, you lose cognitive flexibility. Your framing on things becomes very narrow, very rigid, very limited. What does that do? Well, that reduces your ability to solve problems. The ability to solve problems goes down. Okay, what does that do for you? Okay, as that goes down, you start to make lots of mistakes. And fail. What does that do? Well, of course, that increases your anxiety, and that reinforces, right, that bad events are happening to you. What does all that do? Well, all of this starts to gather in your mind as I'm doomed. You get fatalistic. Well, if you're living in a fatalistic world, you're going to start interpreting more and more events, even neutral events, as bad. And the whole thing starts to feed on itself. The very things that make you so intelligently adaptive, the fact that your cognition zeroes in on relevant information, makes it salient, the fact that it's so complex, capable of complexifying itself and organizing itself, the fact that it is trying to fit you to the environment and process information in a way that's doable within the real world. All these things that make you so adaptive simultaneously make you vulnerable to self-deceptive, self-destructive behavior. That's what it means to say all of your life is threatened. Realize that all of your life is threatened by dukkha. It's not that everything you're doing is painful or distressing. That is ridiculous. That is a meaningless claim. It's that every process you're engaging, every time you're exercising your intelligent agency, you're making yourself vulnerable to self-deceptive, self-destructive processing. We called this when we published parasitic processing. It's not just about bad events. This is just one example. We get into all kinds of these spirals. We'll put up on the video a recent schema for what depression looks like. It was released by some MIT researchers. Very complex like this. We call this parasitic processing because it's like a parasite in that it takes up life within you and it takes life away from you. It causes you to lose your agency. It causes you to suffer. And here's what's important. This capacity for your cognitive brain to be self-organizing, heuristic using, complexifying to create complex systems and functions with emergent abilities, has a downside to it. Look, this is what you know when you're in one of these spirals. You'll know it. Oh no, here I go. Oh no. Knowing it, what does it do for you? What does your belief do? It's like knowing that I should go outside the square. Think outside the box. It doesn't do anything. Why? This is a complex, self-organizing, adaptive system. If you try and intervene here, the rest of the system reorganizes itself around your attempted intervention. It can adapt and preserve itself as you try to destroy it. Why? Because it's making use of the very machinery by which you adapt and make use of the things that are trying to destroy you. That's how it works. No matter where I am, this is a perennial threat. No matter what I am doing, this is always liable to happen. Now what's interesting, as I said, my colleague and good friend Mark Lewis, we're talking about comparing this to other work that he's recently been doing. So some of you may know Mark Lewis. I highly recommend you take a look at his work. Mark has been deeply influential in my own thinking. Ideas about dynamical processing, self-organizing systems development. He is one of the foremost important neuroscientists about addiction, how addiction works in the world. I strongly recommend reading his book, Memoirs of an Addicted Brain. So Mark was himself, I'm not disclosing anything confidential because it's right in the book, Mark was himself an addict in his youth, and then he overcame his addiction, then he went into neuroscience to try and figure out what is addiction, how does it work. Now that's important because addiction is primarily the loss of agency. Right? It's not, addiction is distressing and painful, but when we're talking about somebody being addicted, the way we finally diagnose them is by how dysfunctional they become, how much they lose their agency. Right? So you are a video game addict if you are playing video games to the point where you cannot pursue the goals you want to pursue in your life. You cannot establish and cultivate the relations you want to establish in your life. You cannot cultivate the kind of character or identity you aspire to. If the video gaming is robbing you of those agentic processes, then of course that is what we mean by addiction. Addiction is a loss of agency. Now, when you take a look at Mark's work, Mark Lewis, he challenges, right? I just saw him give a talk. I've been having lunch with him, but I also saw him have just a really good talk at the Society for Psychology and Philosophy, or Philosophy and Psychology, we'll get the order right, just this past year. And he was not the only person making this point, but he articulated it with his own particular explanation, which is his. So the point that many of people are making is the standard model of addiction is incorrect, fundamentally wrong. What's the standard model? The standard model is we have a biophysical chemical dependency, And when the chemical is removed, we get an overwhelming compulsion to have to seek out the chemical. And if we don't get the chemical, then we suffer, similar to as if we were starving from a lack of food. And so that's what addiction is. And the problem with this is it sounds very commonsensical and the media likes it. It has the one unfortunate feature of being almost completely false. Because first of all, you can get addicted to processes that have no biochemical basis, like gambling, for example. Secondly, if the overwhelming compulsion model was correct, you have a great deal of difficulty explaining some very, very pertinent facts. Most people spontaneously give up their addiction in their 30s. We, of course, get focused on the people who remain addicted, and therefore we come to believe that addiction is an overwhelming compulsion. But if you actually track people, many people spontaneously stop being addicted. Here's a great historical example. You have soldiers in Vietnam during the Vietnam War getting addicted to opioids in Vietnam. The opioid crisis! Not that it isn't a crisis, but we tend to think that certain chemicals are intrinsically addictive. So, they get addicted to heroin. When they return to the United States, the vast majority of them spontaneously stop using the drug. But why? Chemical, not in the body. What's going on? Isn't there a biochemical lack and therefore a huge compulsion? Well, think about it. Think about it in terms of existential learning. See, when they were in Vietnam, they had a particular identity. You're a soldier, and they're in a particular arena, war. They're in a particular existential mode. When they return to the United States, they become a citizen, right, and peaceful country. The relationship between the agent and the arena is what is fundamentally being altered in addiction. So Mark proposes a model that he calls reciprocal narrowing. So here's your agent, and here's the arena. And what happens is the drug use is associated with a particular agent-arena relationship. And what happens is, and we talked about this before, remember this is always co-identification. We're always assuming an identity and assigning identity in a co-defining, interdependent manner. What happens is you start to lose a little bit of your cognitive flexibility, perhaps due to something like this. As you lose your cognitive flexibility, the number of options in the world starts to decline, right? As the number of options start to decline, you lose the variability for your agency. As you get a tighter, narrower, less flexible cognitive agency, the number of options in the world goes down. And what happens is these two things reciprocally narrow to where you have no options as to who you could be or how the world can be. And that's addiction. It is a learned, not propositionally learned, perspectively, participatory learning of a loss of agency. I pointed out to Mark that if this is the case, there must be an opposite. If there's a spiral down, there must be a spiral up. And in personal communication, just recently, he said, yes, totally. And you know what that spiraling up would be. What would be the agent-arena relationship in which the agency and the world are expanding? That's anagoge. That's the move towards enlightenment. What I want you to understand is dukkha is these two things because they're interpenetrating. This loss of agency, because this is your agency. as you're simultaneously doing parasitic processing within, you're doing reciprocal narrowing without. Those are totally reinforcing each other. That's dukkha. And no matter where you turn, this is always threatening. You can't get free of it. You can't run away from it. You can't deny it. Remember, the Buddha tried self-denial. This is like trying to hop over your shadow. You can't do it because it is endemic. All of this is endemic. This is the agent-arena relationship. You can't do away with this. This is indispensable to you being a person. This is self-organizing, relevance realizing, complexifying, processing. You can't get away from that because that is what makes you adaptive. So what do? That's what the Buddha meant when you realize that all of your life is threatened by dukkha. He didn't mean believe that all of life is suffering. So, what we need is, how do we address this? Well, once you realize it as a provocation, the point is, you should feel threatened. You should feel threatened, because if I can make you feel threatened by what I've just done here, how close and intimate this threat is to you, then you're starting to enact the process of moving towards enlightenment, rather than just asserting some propositions that are largely inert. So, what's the standard way of presenting the second truth? Suffering is caused by desire. And that gets you into all kinds of problems. Because then, don't I desire enlightenment, but then you should not desire to, and then you can just get into all these weird loops, and right? A better way of thinking about it is realize that dukkha can be understood. Realize that dukkha is caused by the way in which you can become attached, which doesn't mean, right, that you just really like something. It means this sense of a narrowing of yourself and the world so that agency and options are lost. The way the addict is attached to their drug, which is not a compulsive desire, although they will experience it that way, it is better understood as a parasitic processing that has led to a reciprocal narrowing so that no alternatives are available to you. The third, the traditional presentation is the cessation of suffering is attainable. But realize, a better way of putting that is realize that you can recover your agency. Because this narrowing down can also, you can use the same machinery to anagogically ascend out of the cave towards the sun of enlightenment. Realize that this machinery, this complex machinery, this dynamical system can be exapted in a way that reduces your capacity for self-deception. Why? How? How do I address this? By a psychotechnology. The Buddha offered a psychotechnology of practices. Do you know how you deal with a complex dynamical system that is operating against you? By cultivating a counteractive dynamical system that is operating for you. You cultivate a dynamical system that doesn't intervene just here or here, one at a time, like your efforts. I'll try this, oh that doesn't work, I'll try this. Because every time I intervene, it just reconfigures and I'm doing the same damn thing again. Here I am in this fourth relationship, doing the same damn thing again. And I know I'm doing it, and yet when I try and not do it, I find myself doing it. That will not work. That's why people end up in therapy. But what if I could create a dynamical system that could intervene here, 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 simultaneously and in a coordinated fashion? What if I created a counteractive dynamical system? And that didn't operate just at the level of my beliefs, but operated at the level of my states of consciousness and my traits of character. That's what the Buddha offered. He offered the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is a counteractive dynamical system that counteracts parasitic processing and does reciprocal opening beyond the ego self and beyond the everyday world. That's why it's represented by an 8-spoked wheel. It's supposed to be a self-organizing system that rolls itself, in which each part is interdependent on all the other parts. You might have heard it. The Eightfold Path is to cultivate right understanding, right thinking. There's various translations of this, right? Sometimes right aspiration, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, and then right mindfulness and right concentration. We already talked about this. Saying there's right mindfulness and right concentration means there's incorrect. One thing, this right is not moral righteousness. This is right like right-handedness. It means getting an optimal grip. Because that's what my right hand is an expert in doing. It means getting an optimal grip. Notice this is about your cognition. This, right, is about your character. And this is about your consciousness. And it deals with ethical aspects, existential aspects, sapiential aspects. It is the attempt to give you a counteractive dynamical system that can deal with parasitic processing and that can help you reverse the reciprocal narrowing until you get anagogic awakening that takes you beyond the prison of the ego and the everyday world. So we see what's happening here. What I'm trying to show you is this higher state of consciousness, this awakening, is set into a context of helping you do important transformations. It helps you to remember the being mode to get out of modal confusion. It helps you counteract parasitical processing and reciprocal narrowing. It helps thereby to open you up to self-transcendence in a reliable and powerful way. This is what the Buddha was offering people. And I've tried to explain it to you in a way such that both you should feel threatened by what he is trying to provoke in you, and you should be encouraged. Both of these are enactment statements. You should be able to enact the threat and enact the courage, encouragement, enacting the courage, that you can respond to the parasitic processing and the reciprocal narrowing in your own life, to the modal confusion in your own life. Part of what we need to understand is how we can properly integrate this into what we have been learning about wisdom and meaning in the Mediterranean cultural historical context, and how all of that can be integrated within a current scientific worldview. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Viveki John. Make some noise. MEANINGWAVE Autonomous Zone. That was Meaning Crisis and show number 13. Buddhism and Parasitic Processing. A lo-fi lecture from Akira the Don. What's cracking, baby? How you feeling? Benjamin Gunn says that was a quick and they always feel that way. They always fly by. What up, what up, what up? Mike B says, oh dang, love it, thanks. Mike B says, what does anagogic mean? Word XP replies, an elevation of mind to things celestial. Life is suffering. What you gonna do about it? Sweet code and dream, says Akira. What's the dealio? What's up with you, baby? Applause, applause at the chat. Yes, very nice. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So many wave emojis. So many wave emojis. What up, Simeon Wardle says feeling it. Sway. Laser, laser, laser. Yeah. Savage Chill says, so the eightfold path is simply having an optimal grip on the self. And that's the whole thing, isn't it? That's one of the core things your boy is talking about here, right? Is that optimal grip. And something that many do not feel they have. As so many things were taken away and not replaced with anything before so. Sweet and dream. Can you do some bad boy remixes to some Irish music? Not right now. A strange question. As in bad boy, as in Diddy. As in like remixes of bad boy records. With the Pogues. Liberate the Forks, what's that? Perfect meditation material indeed. B. Athena says that last bit was such awakening advice. I'm glad it's useful. Savage Chill. If that's what he was saying, I can dig that. As always with these, they do bear repeat listening. Mel Paradise, the magics and chaos magic are also eightfold. Juicy Lucy, I'm just joining. Are we finishing up or keeping it going? We just finished our live lo-fi lecture. Cherry Hazelnut says, I love Buddhism sets on MEANINGWAVE. Sway says, third eye fixed on the celestial plane. Feet planted firmly on the Pasha Mama. Swiss Squirrel, realizing you're it. Simeon Wardle was gaming while being informed of my computer game addiction. Eye-opening. So you believe you have a computer game addiction based on what your boy was saying? Is it getting in the way of you pursuing that 100% you? Yo. Maba. I can't believe how much I misunderstood from mistranslation. What, just in general? What's that? Benjamin Gunn, sometimes you've got to let go of one thing to get a better grip of something better. Well, you cannot pick up two mugs. Well, actually, I was going to say. What is that weird thing in the background of my stream? That's weird. gremlins in my machinery right now. Big shouts out to David S. Thank you for the support, David S. There's John going hard on that philosophical ATD, going hard on the chops. Yo, somebody better smash that like. We are 13 likes shy of our 100 minimum for functioning. If you're on YouTube, baby, smash that like. Soja Taj, thank you for the support, baby. Maba, thanks for helping my right understanding, Akira. Thank you for being here. Sweet Code and Dream, that would be interesting. Hip Hop Pokes, it has happened before. I have done that before on the morning show on Twitch. Mason, Viveki yanking out parasites. Mabwa, I'm definitely going back to 1 and listening through 13 a few times. Might be, I'm addicted to meaning and the wave it rides on. Savage Chill says you can't grab the future if you're still holding on to the past. That's real. And you can't do shit all in the present if you're occupied with either. Overtly. By Jove. B. Athena says the machine elves were summoned. What, you just took DMT? Hold tight. Hold tight. Word XP says, look at those likes. Hey, look at that. Look at that. The likes jumped up. 104. Well done. Well done, like smashers. Wonderful behavior. Rick Adelc says, I watched the stream last night, but I couldn't fall asleep after, so I went for a walk at 4 a.m. and walked for 12 miles. Got back feeling great, and during the walk, I re-listened to last night's stream, ×2. What did we do last night? Oh, we had a very lit MEANINGWAVE live stream, didn't we? We were going off as if 'twere an arena. Agent arena relationship. Yo, what's up, arena? How you doing? Meaning Crisis and Chill. We'll be doing that again next week. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. It dawns on me that it would be useful to have these, sort of probably, wouldn't it? It would be useful to have these separated from the streams as individual things somehow. For easier listening for people. Sweet Code and Dream says, Akira, have you been to Japan? And if not, do you intend to go to Japan? It is made for you. It has always been my dream. I've been a big dream of mine to go to Japan since I was a small boy, you know? And, you know, funnily enough, or not, I don't know. I was supposed to be there now, you know? I was supposed to be there. I had planned to be there. It had been kind of the thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to be there for the Olympics, you know? Neo Tokyo Olympics, as foretold, you know? As foretold. It is known. As foretold in Akira. You know? The manga from which I got my name. So I thought it made sense. You know, I was at the last Olympics. They bloody built it right outside my house. I was just chilling in Hackney Wick, and they literally built the Olympic Stadium outside my house, you know? I lived in the last unoccupied bit of London. You know, it was marshland. I mean, obviously not completely unoccupied. It was undeveloped marshland, and, you know, a few factories, you know? And I moved there, you know? And then they straight up just built the Olympics on it. You know, so I had drones outside my window. I had American tourists, you know, blocking my pathway to the train, you know. It was insane. And I thought, well, hey, I guess I'll be at the next Olympics. They are, after all, incredible rituals, you know, all the energy and attention of the earth focused on this one spot. The social engineers doing their creepy stuff, all that, you know. It's always very interesting. So I assumed I would be there right now. That was the plan, but obviously, you know, things are going on in the world. Those things have prevented me from having that adventure at this moment in time. So I guess that adventure awaits me still, and I'm very excited to have that adventure. I do, you know, I gotta say, I'm very careful with my language these days. I like to exist in the moment as much as possible, therefore I don't spend too much time looking forward. But I'm excited for that, so I will enjoy that, Karen. I like the idea of it. I don't know what's going on with that. Have they cancelled the Neo Tokyo Olympics? What's going on? It's a habit I have, you know. You know, I lived in East London, Old Street, Shoreditch area. Before that became a thing, I basically moved there because it was cheap and it kind of had a vibe I liked, you know. I was there a couple of years and it suddenly turned into like, by this point, it's like the Silicon Valley of London. It was just desolate wasteland when I first went there. You know, I moved to Dripping Springs and now they tell me you cannot rent a property in Dripping Springs. There's now not a single property to rent in Dripping Springs. House prices in Dripping Springs have trebled. Always happens. Wherever I go next, better watch out. Hey. Aye. Mason says, what's made the same point Viveki emphasizes? You write the universe while it also writes you. Sweet Card and Dream, big up Studio Ghibli. All day. All day. Sheila357 says, you are the center of our universe, secure the dawn. You are breathtaking. Yo. Mike B says, I too heard the aliens were planning on extending an olive branch at the next Olympics. Let's hope so. They always do creepy alien stuff at the Olympics. Always, always. Remember they did that like fake alien landing at the LA Olympics, I believe it was. Of course, the last one, the mascots were these alien creatures. Of course, the enactment though, everyone was expecting a staged alien invasion at the last Olympics, but what they actually did was a weird kind of medical procedure. As I recall, does anyone remember that? It was some kind of like medical procedure enactment strangeness. Supposedly to celebrate the NHS, right? Is that what it was? I remember it being rather creepy. But it's always creepy at those events. It's part of the charm. Benjamin Gunn says, need to check out Akira's Ghibli mixes. We got a couple of Ghibli mixes you can enjoy on our YouTube channel. Yes, you can. 25 Blades says, I suppose Laser Eyes on Twitter is going to roid out Bitcoin. Mike V says, medical procedure? You mean a probing? Remember, it was like a weird sort of dance, play, art spectacle with surgeons and nurses and everyone in masks doing like synchronized dancing or something. I mean, I could be remembering it completely wrong. I'm gonna have to go check that out after this. Anyway, thank you all for being here. Another beautiful evening in the MEANINGWAVE Autonomous Zone by Joe. Hold tight tomorrow. We're doing a special Stoic life storing extravaganza tomorrow. That's gonna be joyful. Joyful Stoic Stoicism and chill tomorrow. Stoicism and chill. We need a name. We need a name for this thing that we've been doing here. This live. What is it? This thing that we do where we play speech and we put music with it. What is that? What do we call that? We need to call it something. Anyway. Hey. Skepticism rises, lo-fi and meaning. Problem with that is that confines it to being lo-fi. It's not always lo-fi. You know, if you remember when we were doing that Dune Wave audiobook, there was an awful lot of like vapor in that. There was vapor trap and all sorts of weird stuff. Just the very act of combining something spoken with music in a live sense. What is this? What is this thing we're doing? What is this thing? Hey, anyway, yeah, I better get out of here. Twitch Hero Alex, could you do me a favor? Or YouTube Hero Alex, one of you beautiful babies. Hit that, if you could hit that wheel. Thank you. This beat is lush. What up, Rhythm says, loving the stream, reawakening me in the best ways. Glad to see you live, love the show and the vibes. Hey, thank you. It's so funny, right? The difference between these things. Yesterday was like an arena. Whoa! Where are we at? What are we doing? What's that say? Mosh! Oh shit. Alright guys, tomorrow morning we're going mosh. We're moshing tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, oh my goodness. Last night's show here was really hype. It was like MEANINGWAVE live arena thing, live, but like lots of singing and jumping up and down, you know? And then this morning, we spun the wheel last night to choose the vibes for this morning's show, and it was hype. So, you know, we did hype this morning, which was great. You know, I played like Temper T, played a bunch of like grime, and like ended up playing like, where did it go? It started around grime and it ended up around like Swedish House Mafia, I think. I can barely remember, you know. So that was this morning. And then this evening, you know, we had this very beautiful, chilled, philosophical, live lo-fi lecture, you know. Lo-fi lecture sounds good, right? Just as a thing. Lo-fi lectures, that sounds like it should. I should have another channel called Lo-fi Lectures and just re-upload the same content. It'd probably do way better. But yeah, it looks like tomorrow we're doing mosh. The Athena says it was hype. This morning. It was hype. Last night people were like, what's hype? I was like, you'll find out. We found out this morning. Anyway, so... Mosh it is tomorrow morning. Let's get it. Meaning Pit. Let's go. Skeptic Riot says lo-fi lecture for the win. LMFAO. Lo-fi lecture sounds great, right? Problem is though, again, it's like if you do something that's not a lecture, like the Dune book, doesn't work. And if you do something that isn't a lecture, like you know, an old Stoic book, doesn't work. So it only works if it's a lecture. That's a playlist, at least, I guess. I should make a playlist of these on the channel. Lo-fi lectures. Someone's probably searching for that. Yo! Mason says live scoring sounds real professional. It does, right? I don't know if it's technically live scoring. That's what I say at the moment because that's the closest thing I can think of, you know? Mason says open up the meaning pit. Yeah, we're about to. That's what's happening. Okay, tomorrow. Open up the meaning pit. By the way, something's happened again because of the nature of this show. But I'm speaking a lot quieter, I guess. This is definitely, people write to me and they say they listen to this to go to sleep, and I always think that's strange because it's often quite shouty, you know. Oftentimes I'm you know, making DMX noises or something. Rhythm says I'd binge watch that playlist. Is that a euphemism? Hey. Thorny merch collections dropping in the shop. Maybe now. I might go make them live now. I might go make them live now. All right, baby, let's get out of here. If you're on Twitch, we're going to go raid somebody. If anyone's on Twitch, who's on Twitch? Yeah, we got people on Twitch. Nice. And looked. Shouts out to Twitch. All right, and YouTube, if you want to come raiding, jump on over to Twitch. Twitch.tv/Akira the Don. Twitch.tv/Akira the Don. We're going to go jump into another club, you know. And this is exciting, you know. This is basically, I pretty much leave this up to Twitch Hero Alex, you know. And Twitch Hero Alex has been taking us some wonderful places. But this morning's one was really good. The DJ this morning I really liked. He was playing like quite rare and really interesting boom bap stuff. Like I hadn't heard about 27% of it, you know, which is quite a lot for me. A lot of cool new stuff. It was very dope. Ass of Bass. Ass of Bass. What an incredible name. Thank you for the support. Ass of Bass over on Twitch. Very appreciate you. God bless. Yeah. Are you ready, Twitch hero Alex? Are you ready to maneuver us into another dimension? You know? I hope you are, because I'm going to do my by 5 thing. Yo! MEANINGWAVE Autonomous Zone. Thank you for being here. We'll be back tomorrow morning for Mosh at the Club of Meaning. 3, 2, 1. Bye bye.